Hi, I'm Rebecca.
And I'm Charlene. Welcome to Empowered, Life Lessons of Everyday Women.
Each episode, you're going to meet an amazing woman who has struggled through challenges both in her home life and work life and has become very successful. Meet Nela. Nela has been working as a veterinarian for over 6 years. She got her degree overseas and brings great insight into navigating the challenges of becoming a vet. So grab a cup of coffee, get in a comfy chair, and join us as we talk to Nela. Nela, we are so happy you could join us today.
Thank you for having me.
So we get right to the good stuff at the very beginning. And I know I already asked you this in one of our questions that we sent you, but what would you, if you had a chance to go back and talk to your 20-year-old self, what bit of advice would you give her?
I think the most important one would be to think outside the box and conventional constraints, especially with regards to career choices. You know, when I'm 40, so my 20-year-old self would have been in undergrad, college, pursuing the traditional degree. And at that point, I knew, of course, I wanted to become a veterinarian. So I knew I had to finish my bachelor's, then apply for vet school, and, was in it for the long grind. And planning to go into traditional general practice, working 8 to 5, 9 to 5 kind of thing. I always wanted to travel a lot. And because it was such a career that required such a commitment, I just didn't quite mesh my love for travel while pursuing my career, which I definitely could have done. So that's the biggest drawback I say that I had in my early adult life is, looking at other sources of income stream, especially online income stream, and just trying to utilize those to be able to do more of the things that I love, which was at the time traveling, setting goals, meeting them, and just constantly setting new goals, constantly developing with life experience.
So let me just kind of summarize. So you knew you wanted to be a vet. You understood the time constraints to do that. Yes. You had all these other goals. You focused more on getting your degree than maybe getting your degree and traveling and doing some of the other things simultaneously. Right. Oh, very interesting. And I can see that.
Yeah. And I want to ask another question. So what made you decide that you wanted to be a vet? You said you knew that you wanted to. Was there something that happened or in your life?
Growing up, I was around animals all the time. My parents divorced when I was very young, 3, and my dad's always loved animals. He had roosters, horses, dogs, you name it. So that kind of the animal bond is something that I appreciated throughout my life. And in junior high, I had more of an idea to go into conservation medicine, either just biologist, marine biology, and that sort of evolved into veterinary medicine because I had a deep love for companion animals and terrified of sharks. I still am. I'm one of those.
Understandably so.
But when I started to do more research and see what a marine biologist does on a day-to-day basis, there's a lot of open ocean type of activity, and that just kind of waked me out.
Okay.
It just, of course, I could have overcome that fear, but there were other aspects about working with animals that I preferred, and I thought veterinary medicine at that point was kind of the way to go. And so that's what steered me in that direction.
That makes sense.
To me, being a vet is kind of like, going into that is a commitment, just like becoming a medical doctor. You're going to school for a very long time, and it's going to take a lot of work. I guess the other question I have for you is, I saw you studied overseas.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about what made you choose that particular college, why you went and tell our listeners where you went?
So I graduated as a veterinarian from the University of the West Indies in Trinidad and Tobago, Twin Islands. I grew up in Miami and finished my associates in Miami-Dade College, which is like the main community college in Miami. And then I started the 2 years to finish my bachelor's at Barry University, which is a private university in North Miami. And a year into the bachelor's degree, I applied for UC Davis pre-vet program. I got it. And, I guess that was my dream at the time. But the reality was that I really couldn't afford to go out of state, especially not just for my veterinary degree, but pre-vet, undergrad.
Right. Yeah, it's expensive.
Afford all of the living expenses practice and, be on the opposite side of the country from my support system, which was my family at the time. My ex-husband is Trinidadian, and we were traveling to meet his family, and he has 3 sisters. One of them is a veterinarian. She never practiced very long, but she suggested that I applied to the veterinary school. They weren't U.S. accredited, but they were working on attaining their U.S. accreditation, but they were U.S. recognized. So worst comes to worst, I graduated and have to go through the U.S. accreditation process. They are at least recognized. And at the time, they were a lot more affordable than I think even in-state tuition. They had loans for U.S. students that were made available through a private investor company. So sounded great. Awesome. Applying, submit all my credits, get in. They also, their school system's a little bit different. You can get a college degree basically with your associate. It was a little bit of a longer course. So it was a 5-year program versus a 4-year program in the US, having had the bachelor's degree. So I applied, got in. My first year's tuition, I didn't have to get a loan because we had enough savings. My ex at the time was making decent wages as a contractor. Second year came around, and this was 2008 when I started vet school, when the US market crashed. So this investor company was decimated, basically. And there were no other means to get student loans. So at that point, I had to depend on family loans. And so I got through my second year of vet school and then had to take a break for a year. And I lived with my parents in Miami at the time, worked as a veterinary technician. That was actually my first time that I was officially working as a veterinary technician, because prior to that I was just volunteering in high school. So I learned a lot. I got to do pretty much everything: vet tech, receptionist, kennel work, kind of would be able to do everything in the clinic. So it gave me tons of work experience and practical experience going back into vet school into my 3rd year, which was still kind of preclinical at that time. So that's how I ended up at the University of the West Indies.
Well, that's good though, too. I mean, it reinforced that you really wanted to do it. I mean, right? I mean, having all that.
Plus being forced to almost go home and work as a vet tech.
Right.
Kind of gave you that reinforcement. Plus, it allowed you to earn an income to then go back and finish. And so it also
save enough money.
Yeah.
Right. Had I not planned for it, I maybe would have considered taking the year off anyway. My paternal grandfather was pretty ill that year. So, and my grandma took care of him. He had Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, so he had mobility issues. So I got to, because I was around, I got to help out quite a bit before he passed.
That was
nice. Quite a gift.
Yeah,
it's a
definitely. Gift. In your practice, I am sure you've come into many emergency type situations dealing with animals. And the bad part about animals is they can't talk to you. However, people can, right? So you're working with very stressed animal parent. I am wondering if there's any way that you can share with us how you deal with some of those difficult situations when people's emotions are running high, scared, nervous. How do you handle that?
Some clients can be very challenging and test your patience, so to say. I try as much as possible to put those things aside and stay very matter of fact, but also try to be compassionate and empathetic. In a way, kind of try and put myself in their shoes, especially when there's limited finances, and they want answers, they can't afford a whole lot of diagnostics. They want prognosis, life expectancy, before you can truly run more definitive diagnosis to be able to give them that answer. And so just try to be empathetic and compassionate and understanding and explain that we don't have all the answers. We're not God. We do the best that we can. And just like them, with their resources, help them do the best that they can for their pet. Most of the times, even if I have a frantic owner, say there's a patient that's, really unstable with a really poor prognosis, I can kind of get them to calm down and reason with them. That's not always the case, but the approach usually works.
So I'm going to ask you a question that has nothing to do with that, but it has to do with the fact that you work at a very busy veterinarian practice. So I understand that you are basically a new mom. I would say that sub a year. And how did you to accommodate a maternity leave, and how are you able then to work now that you've had a child?
Well, the maternity leave I decided, because I made the decision to become a mom, I'm a little bit older, and, whether the future holds another child or not is still in question. I wanted to be present as much as I could. So I maxed my maternity leave of 3 months and, planned for that ahead of time. Western, the company that owns our clinic, thankfully was very supportive. They provide benefits for maternity leave. So of course that helps. And going back into practice, I knew that I also didn't want to miss out on a lot of time being spent with him. So I only came back part-time, and that's probably not going to change in the foreseeable future because I plan to homeschool. I cook for him. I don't have pre-made meals and stuff, and I'm still nursing, which is physically challenging sometimes.
Wow. Okay.
And it definitely is.
When I work,
So
yeah,
your clinic is not a standalone clinic. It's part of a major conglomerate. So they already had a maternity process in place for you.
yes,
Oh,
yeah.
awesome. Okay, that's great.
And you found that the practice that you're in, you found the people around you very supportive, I'm sure, of allowing you to have that opportunity, because not every place would be so welcoming. Right.
Yeah.
So that was
Yes.
great.
No, they've been very supportive.
Yeah.
I mean, they even threw me a little baby shower, which was wonderful. And yeah, then working part-time, thankfully Dad he's a handyman, realtor, home inspector. So the jobs he has allows him a lot of flexibility with his schedule. And so we've had other options, potentially family members we could reach out to take care of him, but he mostly stays with him when I'm working. And then I pump while I'm at work so that I can leave some milk behind.
That's great that you have that support system, because
Yes.
not everybody has that in their lives. And it's something that's very precious, I think.
So one of the questions that we like to ask is life lessons. You have a life lesson that as we've interviewed one person, they said, well, I haven't lived my whole life yet, so I'm not sure this is my life lesson. But to this date, what is the biggest life lesson that you've had?
I think there's a lot of value to following your instinct. When it comes to reevaluating your life situation, your future goals, and what truly matters, following your instinct is very valuable. I was in a relationship that, towards the end was not very healthy, and I kind of went against the grain quite a bit, trying to improve the relationship and change the individual that I was with. And I realized towards the end that I couldn't. And I wish that I wouldn't say wasted, because I don't feel like my life was wasted, but I just wish that I had taken the initiative sooner to say, okay, this wasn't working. This isn't working. We need to move on.
It's really interesting that you were talking about that, because as Rebecca knows, my biggest life lesson is also to kind of go with your gut. So, I mean, I think people don't listen to their instinct. It's there, it's gnawing at you. You have direction, and when you ignore it is when you seem to you find out that you should have just listened because it was guiding you. Yeah, so that's great.
Well, but sometimes, you're in a relationship or a job, could have been a job, right? And you're trying to make it work. You're trying to make it work because it's hard to stop working or end a relationship and move on to the next thing. That takes a lot of courage. And you really empowered yourself in order to do that, right? You stopped, you listened to your instincts, and you empowered yourself to move on. So that's awesome.
Part of the reason why I moved out to Arizona, it was part of the change that I needed. And moving out here gave me that push, to just end it and move on.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. Okay, this is kind of a funny question, but do you see any correlation between being a good pet parent and being a good human?
Oh, of course. I think being a good human, one of the main qualities that we need to embrace is compassion. That applies to being a good pet parent as well. Pets will be challenging at times, and most of us treat them as our kids, but that's not always the case. There's clients that inadvertently do things that are harmful to pets, and unintentional most of the times. But having that compassion both for your pets and for your humans in your life, I think is kind of the best characteristic that we can have. And that's, it evolves into, garnering relationships, influencing other individuals positively. So
I like that.
that's one thing that I value.
Yep, I like that. So you talked about influencing. Did you have somebody who was a big influence in your life?
My dad, I would say my parents, for sure. They're both hard workers, very honest and compassionate individuals. And so, all throughout my life, they taught me to be very independent and, treat others as though as I would like to be treated. I'm glad that I had those role models very early in life. So, it's unfortunate that a lot of kids these days don't.
Yes, they don't. They don't necessarily, you stick them in front of a television or an iPad or whatever. And that doesn't always work out. All right. So challenges. What is some of the biggest challenges that you've had in your work life, career life that you haven't already addressed?
So work life, making time for myself is kind of an ongoing challenge.
Especially as a new parent.
Yeah.
Especially as a new parent. And it used to stress me out initially because I've always been very active, somewhat regular workout schedule, and that's kind of gone out the window. So, it's if I get 5-10 minutes, I try to squeeze something in. But it is challenging. You can't, if you're making travel plans, there's so much more now to be considered. You can't just pick up and go. But that's really the main challenge, is just finding time for myself, making sure that I'm at peace and that I give myself some time to kind of consolidate my thoughts and my ideas and my plan for, whether it be the week, the month, the year. But I think I'm managing.
Finding time to take time for yourself, even if it's 10 minutes.
Yes. Yeah. And I mean, with Otto, my newborn, we involved him in a lot of the things that we love doing. So hiking, pretty much, as soon as he was 2 weeks old, hike, camping. So we get to do a lot of the same things that we love with him. We share that with him, and that's one thing that I find has helped in maintaining my work-life balance and mental tranquility, and reminders on my phone, Google Calendar, setting reminders a week ahead, hours ahead, that kind of thing, because they call it baby brain, but I don't know. To me, it seems like ever since pregnancy passed, that memory is still lagging behind. So in that sense, I love technology. Otherwise, I'm not for technology much.
I honestly believe, because it's not just baby mind, right? Every time I was pregnant 3 times. I swear to God, I lost a few more brain cells every single time. It's just, you just have to reorganize your thought process, I want to say.
I have to say, I guess I'm lucky. I never felt that. So, but I also went right back to work. As soon as I was able to get back into the office, I was not cut out for motherhood at the beginning, and I don't think I ever really was, but I kept meeting men that wanted children, so I knew it was in my destiny, but it was like, I just put me in the office, I'm happy.
Yeah.
Now, I was going to say, any last words of wisdom you want to share with our listeners before we go?
Well, I think that our goals, future goals, and what we find makes us happy and makes us feel fulfilled is ever evolving. And I think that there is so much contentment and satisfaction that we can find in the day-to-day activities if we just kind of focus and are in the moment versus being on our phones or on TikTok or on this and that's at least and especially at this time in our life, I would say focus on relationships, spending time with family, friends, and be in the moment. Don't get distracted easily by things that are inconsequential.
Right. It's not important how many likes you get on something. You're not going to remember that in 30 years. You're going to remember the friendships and the relationships that you've built is what you're going to remember. And I agree with you. I think that's really important.
Well, thank you so much, Nella. This was great.
It's really fun.
Yeah, it was really fun, really, really interesting. And I'm sure our listeners will find, especially those that are new to motherhood or are trying to balance work and home life, this will be really helpful for them.
It's challenging. There's no doubt about it. So we appreciate your time. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
To our listeners, if you found this podcast helpful or have any questions, please let us know. You can send us an email at empoweredlifelessons@gmail.com, or you can visit our website at www.empoweredlifelessons.com, or you can find us on Facebook and other popular social media. And if you wish to share your life lessons with us, please contact us at our email, and we will put you up for consideration, because we are always looking for great insight, life lessons, and we really appreciate hearing from our listeners. In our next episode, meet Elizabeth. She has been an advocate for women and children health care in a variety of areas. She recently retired as the CEO of Arizona Make-A-Wish after 12 years.